The crack of thunder reverberated through the park as Mason Lawson lunged forward, shoving the startled woman out of harm's way, just as the massive oak tree split with a deafening snap. The rain-soaked ground had weakened the ancient tree's roots, and the violent summer storm had finally claimed it. Mason felt the rush of air and heard the tremendous crash behind him as he and the woman tumbled onto the muddy grass, safely beyond the tree's destructive path. "Emma, are you okay?" a small voice called out. Mason's 7-year-old daughter stood several feet away, eyes wide with terror, clutching her pink backpack to her chest. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Mason called back, quickly getting to his feet. His worn jeans were now caked with mud, but he couldn't care less about that. He turned to the woman he'd just saved, extending his hand. "Are you hurt?" The woman he'd rescued seemed stunned, her designer clothes now splattered with mud and grass stains. She was elegant, probably in her mid-30s, with dark hair plastered to her face from the rain. She took his hand, allowing him to help her up. I don't think so," she stammered, brushing herself off as best she could. "You saved my life." Mason shook his head. "Just happened to be in the right place." He glanced back at his daughter, who was cautiously approaching. "Emma, stay back, honey. There might be more branches coming down." The woman looked at his daughter and then back at Mason, raindrops streaming down her face. "I'm Olivia Grant," she said, trying to regain her composure. "Mason Lawson," he replied, "and that's my daughter, Emma." Another crack of thunder made them all jump, and the rain intensified. "We should get out of this storm," Mason said, gesturing toward a nearby pavilion. "It's not safe with these trees." As they hurried to shelter, Mason noticed Olivia was limping slightly. Without asking, he offered his arm for support, which she accepted with a grateful nod. Under the pavilion, Mason pulled off his jacket and draped it over Emma's shoulders. The little girl's blonde ponytail was dripping, her blue eyes still wide with the excitement of what had just happened. "You're bleeding," Emma said suddenly, pointing at Olivia's knee. Mason looked down to see a tear in Olivia's expensive-looking pants and a nasty scrape beneath. "It's nothing," Olivia insisted, though she winced when she tried to bend it. "Emma, grab the first aid kit from my backpack," Mason instructed. His daughter nodded and retrieved a small red pouch from his weathered backpack. "You carry a first aid kit?" Olivia asked, sounding impressed. Mason smiled as he took out an antiseptic wipe. "Single dad." "You learn to be prepared for anything." He paused, holding up the wipe. "May I?" Olivia nodded, and Mason gently cleaned the scrape while Emma watched with intense interest. "Are you a doctor?" Olivia asked. Mason chuckled. "No, just a carpenter." "But Emma here has given me plenty of practice with scrapes and bruises." "Dad builds really cool stuff," Emma chimed in proudly. "He's making a treehouse for Mr. Peterson's grandkids, but it's taking forever because he has to work at the hardware store, too." Mason felt a flush of embarrassment at his daughter's innocent revelation of their financial situation. He'd been struggling to make ends meet since his wife died 3 years ago. Carpentry jobs weren't steady enough, so he worked part-time at the local hardware store to ensure a regular paycheck. "Sounds like you're a man of many talents," Olivia said, with no trace of judgment in her voice. As Mason finished bandaging her knee, Olivia's phone rang. She answered, her tone immediately shifting to something more authoritative. "Yes, I know the meeting started 15 minutes ago, Dennis." "No, I won't be making it. Yes, I'm quite aware of how important the Richardson account is." She sighed. "I nearly got crushed by a falling tree in Oakwood Park. No, I'm not joking. Look, reschedule for tomorrow morning. I'll handle Richardson personally." She hung up and noticed Mason and Emma staring at her. "Sorry about that," she said. "Work never stops, apparently even during natural disasters." "Sounds important," Mason commented, packing up the first aid kit. "CEO problems," Olivia said with a small smile. "Glamorous, right?" Mason's eyebrows shot up. "CEO of what, if you don't mind me asking?" Grant Technologies. "We develop software solutions for healthcare systems." She shrugged as if it were nothing special. Emma's eyes widened. That's so cool. Dad says computers are the future, but we only have an old laptop that's super slow. Mason felt another wave of embarrassment. Emma, he said gently, remember what we talked about with personal information. The rain was beginning to let up, and Mason checked his watch. We should get going. Emma has homework, and I have a shift at the hardware store in an hour. Olivia looked surprised. You're working today, after all this? Mason shrugged. Bills don't pay themselves, especially not when you're buying school supplies for second grade. Olivia studied him for a moment, then pulled out a business card from her purse. I insist you let me do something to thank you. Please call me. Mason hesitated before taking the card. Really, it's not necessary. I disagree, Olivia said firmly. You saved my life. At the very least, let me buy you and Emma dinner sometime. Mason pocketed the card, not wanting to argue. The rain's stopping. Can we drop you somewhere? My truck's just across the park. Olivia smiled. That would be wonderful, thank you. As they walked through the park, Emma skipped ahead, seemingly recovered from the frightening incident. Mason and Olivia walked side by side, navigating around puddles and fallen branches. She's delightful, Olivia said, watching Emma. How long have you been raising her alone? Mason's expression softened. Her mother passed away 3 years ago, cancer. I'm so sorry, Olivia said quietly. It was hard at first, but Emma and I were a team now. He smiled, watching his daughter. What about you? Married? Kids? Olivia shook her head. Married to my work, as the cliché goes. Never found the right time or the right person, I suppose. They reached Mason's old blue pickup truck, which had seen better days. He helped Emma into the back seat where her booster was secured, then opened the passenger door for Olivia. It's not exactly executive transportation, he apologized, noticing her taking in the worn interior. It has character, Olivia replied with a warm smile. And it's dry, which is all that matters right now. As they drove, Olivia directed him to a sleek high-rise in the center of the city. Mason whistled low as they pulled up to the entrance. Nice building, he commented. It's home, Olivia said simply. She turned to Emma in the back seat. It was lovely meeting you, Emma. Thank you for sharing your dad's first aid kit with me, Emma beamed. You're welcome. Maybe next time you can see the treehouse Dad's building? I'd like that, Olivia said, then turned to Mason. Thank you again. Please call that number, I mean it. Mason nodded, though he wasn't sure if he would. As she got out of the truck, he couldn't help but notice how out of place she looked next to his battered pickup, even in her mud-stained clothes. She belonged to a different world. Dad, she was nice, Emma said as they pulled away. And pretty, you should call her. Mason chuckled. She's a CEO, Emma. People like that are busy. But she gave you her number, Emma persisted. For a thank you dinner, Mason corrected. Now, let's get you home so I can get to work. 3 days later, Mason still hadn't called Olivia. The business card sat on his kitchen counter, occasionally catching his eye as he prepared meals or helped Emma with homework. It wasn't that he didn't want to see Olivia again, quite the opposite. There had been something about her, a genuineness beneath the polished exterior, that had caught his attention. But the reality was that their worlds were too different. On Friday afternoon, Mason was at the hardware store, helping an elderly customer find the right type of wood glue, when he heard a familiar voice. I'm looking for a Mason Lawson. I was told he works here. Mason turned to see Olivia standing at the customer service desk. Gone were the mud-stained clothes, replaced by a tailored blazer and pencil skirt that screamed corporate success. Yet she seemed slightly out of place among the power tools and lumber. The store manager pointed in his direction, and Olivia spotted him. A smile lit up her face as she approached. You didn't call, she said without preamble. Mason finished with his customer before responding. I didn't think you were serious about the dinner offer. I don't make offers I don't mean, Olivia replied, and I don't give out my personal cell number lightly. Mason raised an eyebrow. That was your personal number. Of course, Olivia said. Did you think I was going to route you through my assistant? Mason couldn't help but smile. I figured a CEO would have people to handle her social calendar. Well, this CEO handles her own thank you dinners, Olivia said firmly. Are you free tomorrow night? For you and Emma, Mason hesitated. His pride was telling him to decline, but the genuine look in Olivia's eyes was hard to resist. Plus, Emma would be thrilled. I suppose we could do that, he conceded. Excellent, Olivia said, looking pleased. I know a great family restaurant not far from here. 6 o'clock. 6 works, Mason agreed. But nothing fancy, please. Emma spills things and I don't own a tie. Olivia laughed. Noted, no ties required. She glanced at her watch. I have to run to a meeting, but text me your address, and I'll pick you both up tomorrow. Before Mason could argue, she was gone, leaving behind a subtle scent of expensive perfume that seemed out of place among the hardware store smells. Was that Olivia Grant? His manager asked, approaching with wide eyes. Mason nodded. You know her. Know her. Her company is worth millions. They're developing some revolutionary medical software. My wife works at the hospital that's testing it. He looked at Mason with new interest. How do you know Olivia Grant? Long story, Mason replied, not wanting to elaborate. Involves a falling tree. The following evening, Mason found himself nervously checking his appearance in the mirror. He'd put on his best jeans and a button-down shirt that wasn't too wrinkled. Emma was even more excited, wearing her favorite purple dress and asking repeatedly when Olivia would arrive. Dad, do you think Olivia lives in a mansion? Emma asked as she twirled in front of the TV. I don't know, sweetheart, Mason replied, but remember what we talked about. It doesn't matter what kind of house someone lives in or how much money they have. Emma nodded solemnly. What matters is if they're nice and kind. Exactly, Mason said, just as a knock came at the door. Olivia stood on their modest porch, looking casually elegant in jeans and a silk blouse. She held a small gift bag. Right on time, Mason said, inviting her in. I brought something for Emma, Olivia said, handing the bag to the excited child. Emma pulled out a beautiful hardcover book about space exploration. Wow, this is so cool, Dad, look. That's very thoughtful, Mason said, genuinely touched. Emma had recently become fascinated with astronomy after a school field trip to the planetarium, but the books she wanted were always beyond their budget. I hope it's okay, Olivia said quietly to Mason. I remembered she mentioned loving space during our car ride. Mason was impressed that Olivia had paid such close attention to his daughter's interests. It's perfect, thank you. Olivia drove them to a cheerful family restaurant with a playground visible through the windows. As they were seated, Mason noted that while the place wasn't fancy, it wasn't exactly cheap either. This is one of my favorite spots, Olivia confided. My nephew loves it here. You have a nephew? Emma asked, coloring on the kids' menu the hostess had provided. 2 nephews and a niece, Olivia confirmed. My brother's children. They live across town. Throughout dinner, Mason was surprised at how easy conversation flowed. Olivia asked Emma about school and listened with genuine interest to the girl's animated stories about her friends and teachers. She shared funny tales about her own childhood, making both Mason and Emma laugh. So, Mason, Olivia said as Emma went to play on the restaurant's indoor playground after finishing her meal, tell me more about your carpentry. Emma mentioned a treehouse. Mason nodded, warming to his favorite subject. It's a commission from a family with 3 grandkids, 2 levels, a rope ladder, even a small zip line to the adjacent tree. It's the kind of project I love, creative, challenging. Why aren't you doing that full time? Olivia asked. You obviously have talent, Mason sighed. It's complicated. After Sarah, my wife, passed, I needed stability more than fulfillment. The hardware store offers health insurance for Emma. Carpentry jobs come and go. But you'd rather be building full-time? In a perfect world, Mason admitted. I've thought about starting my own business, but the startup costs, the risk. He trailed off, suddenly aware that he was sharing more than he typically would with someone he barely knew. Olivia seemed to sense his discomfort and changed the subject. "Tell me about Emma." "She's such a bright child." Mason's face lit up as he talked about his daughter, her love of reading, her talent for drawing, her compassion for others. "She's the best thing in my life," he finished simply. When dinner ended and Olivia drove them home, Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat, clutching her new book. "I had a lovely time," Olivia said softly as Mason carried Emma from the car. "So did we," Mason replied. "Thank you." Olivia hesitated, then said, "I'd like to see you again." "Both of you?" Mason felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced in years. "I'd like that too." Over the next few weeks, Olivia became a regular presence in their lives. She joined them for a picnic in the park, took them to a children's museum, and even spent an afternoon helping Emma build a model solar system for a school project. Each time, Mason found himself more drawn to her intelligence, her kindness, and the way she genuinely cared about Emma. One Saturday, Olivia suggested they visit the treehouse Mason was building. "I'd love to see your work," she said. "Emma talks about it like it's a wonder of the world." Mason laughed but agreed. The site was peaceful on weekends when the family was away at their lake house. He felt a surprising pride as he showed Olivia the structure taking shape between two massive oaks. "Mason, this is incredible," Olivia said, running her hand along the smooth wooden railing of the platform. "This isn't just carpentry, this is art." Mason felt his face warm at the praise. "It's nothing special." "It absolutely is," Olivia insisted. She climbed the ladder to the upper level where Mason had installed a small telescope mount for the children. "You designed all of this," Mason nodded, joining her on the platform. Emma was exploring the lower level, pretending to be a pirate captain. "You should be running your own business," Olivia said. "This talent shouldn't be hidden away." "Someday, maybe," Mason replied. "When Emma's older, when things are more stable." Olivia turned to face him, suddenly serious. "What if someday could be sooner?" Before Mason could ask what she meant, Emma called up excitedly about finding a butterfly, and the moment passed. That evening, after dropping Emma off for a sleepover at her best friend's house, Mason invited Olivia in for coffee. It was the first time they'd been alone together, and a nervous energy filled the space between them. "You have a lovely home," Olivia said, looking around the small but tidy living room. Family photos lined the walls, and handmade furniture Mason's own work gave the space a warm, personal feel. "It's nothing compared to your place, I'm sure," Mason said, handing her a mug. "My apartment is 3 times the size and has half the character," Olivia replied. "This feels like a home." They sat on the couch, a comfortable silence falling between them before Olivia spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to start your own carpentry business someday." Mason nodded. "It's a dream, not very practical right now." "What if I told you I might have a proposition that could make it practical?" Olivia set down her mug. "My company is renovating our headquarters, and I'm not impressed with the contractors who bid on the custom woodwork. The reception area, conference tables, built-in cabinets, all of it needs someone with an eye for detail and beauty." Mason stared at her. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering your future business its first major client," Olivia corrected, "with a contract substantial enough to help you get started." Mason felt a flicker of annoyance. "I don't need charity, Olivia." "This isn't charity," she said firmly. "This is me recognizing talent and wanting the best craftsmen for my company. I've seen your work. You're exactly what we need." Mason stood up, pacing the small room. "And it has nothing to do with us, whatever this is between us." Olivia rose to face him. "Would I have thought of you if we hadn't met?" "No, but am I offering this because I have feelings for you? Absolutely not. I don't mix business with pleasure, Mason." The word feelings hung in the air between them. "So you do have feelings," Mason said quietly. Olivia's professional demeanor slipped, vulnerability showing in her eyes. "Of course I do. How could I not?" Mason stepped closer. "I've been fighting this because it seems impossible. You're a CEO. I'm a single dad working 2 jobs to make ends meet." "And those are just circumstances," Olivia said, her voice soft. "They don't define who we are." Mason reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Who are we, then?" "We're 2 people who found each other because of a falling tree," Olivia said with a small smile. "The rest is just details." Mason leaned down, kissing her gently. Olivia responded immediately, her arms wrapping around his neck as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, Mason rested his forehead against hers. "I haven't felt this way in a very long time." "Neither have I," Olivia whispered. "Maybe never." They spent the evening talking, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Olivia told him about growing up with driven parents who expected excellence, about building her company from the ground up, about the loneliness that sometimes came with success. Mason shared his grief over losing Sarah, his struggles as a single parent, his dreams for Emma's future. As the night grew late, Olivia reluctantly said she should go. At the door, she turned to him. "Think about my offer. As a business proposition, not a personal one, your work deserves to be seen." Mason nodded. "I will, and Olivia. Thank you for seeing something in me that I sometimes forget is there." In the weeks that followed, Mason and Olivia's relationship deepened. She became a fixture at their Sunday dinners, helped Emma with her homework, and even attended Emma's school play, sitting proudly beside Mason as Emma delivered her lines perfectly. After careful consideration and many conversations with Olivia about keeping their personal and professional lives separate, Mason decided to accept the contract for Grant Technologies woodwork. He gave notice at the hardware store, secured a small business loan using the contract as collateral, and rented a workshop space. Emma was thrilled about her dad's new venture, proudly telling her teachers and friends that her father was a business owner now. Mason found himself working harder than ever, but loving every minute of it. 4 months into their relationship, Mason invited Olivia to join them for Emma's 8th birthday party. It was a simple backyard affair with a few of Emma's friends, balloons, and a homemade cake. "Olivia." Emma squealed when she arrived bearing a large gift. "You came?" "I wouldn't miss it for anything," Olivia said, hugging the child. Over the past months, she and Emma had formed a bond that warmed Mason's heart. As the party wound down and the last guests left, Emma was surrounded by her presence, excitedly showing Olivia the art set she'd received. "I have something for you too," Mason said to Olivia, pulling a small wrapped package from his pocket. "It's not my birthday," Olivia protested. "Just open it," Mason insisted with a smile. Inside was a delicate wooden pendant on a silver chain. Carved into the polished maple was a tiny tree, its branches spreading out in intricate detail. "Mason, it's beautiful," Olivia breathed, running her finger over the smooth wood. "I made it," he said, "to remember how we met." Olivia's eyes glistened as she put it on. "I love it, thank you." That night, after Emma was in bed, Mason and Olivia sat on the porch swing, her head resting on his shoulder. "I've been thinking," Olivia said quietly. "The contract work at my company is almost done." Mason nodded. 2 more weeks, I think. The conference table is nearly finished. And your business, other clients?" Mason smiled. "Thanks to the work I did for you, I have 3 more contracts lined up. Word of mouth is powerful." "I'm so proud of you," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "I couldn't have done it without you believing in me," Mason replied. Olivia sat up, turning to face him. "That's not true. You had this in you all along. You just needed a push." Mason touched the wooden pendant resting against her collarbone. "Maybe, but having you in my life has changed everything, for me and for Emma." "You've changed my life too," Olivia said softly. "Before you, I was all about work. Now I understand there's so much more." Mason took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I've been thinking about the future, our future. I know it's only been a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything." Olivia's eyes widened as Mason slid off the swing onto one knee before her. "I don't have a ring yet," he admitted. I wanted to ask first to make sure this is what you want too. Mason, Olivia whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I love you, Olivia, and I know Emma loves you too. Would you consider becoming a permanent part of our family? Olivia's hand trembled as she reached out to touch his face. Are you asking me to marry you? Mason nodded, his own eyes moist. I am. I know our worlds are different. No, Olivia interrupted. Our worlds aren't different anymore. We've built one world together. She slipped off the swing to kneel in front of him, taking his hands in hers. Yes, Mason. Yes, I'll marry you. Mason pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply as joy overwhelmed him. A small voice broke the moment. Does this mean Olivia's going to be my mom now? They turned to see Emma standing in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Olivia looked to Mason, who nodded encouragingly. Would that be okay with you, Emma? Olivia asked gently. Emma considered this for a moment, then broke into a wide smile. Yes, I asked Santa for a mom last Christmas, but Dad said Santa couldn't bring people. I guess he was wrong. Mason laughed, opening his arm to include Emma in their embrace. I guess I was, sweetheart. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, Mason stood beneath an arch of flowering branches in the backyard of what was now their home, a charming house with enough room for his growing business and their growing family. Emma, dressed in a flowing purple dress, proudly served as flower girl and ring bearer combined. As Olivia walked toward him, radiant in a simple white gown, Mason reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. A falling tree that could have ended a life had instead created a new one, a life where a struggling single dad found love with a CEO who saw beyond circumstances to the heart of who he was. When Olivia reached him, taking his hands in hers, she whispered, "Best storm ever." Mason smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. Best storm ever, he agreed. 1 year after their wedding, Mason's custom furniture business had grown enough to hire 2 apprentices. Olivia continued as CEO of Grant Technologies, though she'd made changes to create more balance in her life. Their family had expanded too. They were expecting a baby in the fall, a little brother or sister for Emma, who was thrilled at the prospect. On the anniversary of the day they met, Mason took Olivia and Emma to Oakwood Park. The old oak that had fallen was long gone, but in its place, the city had planted a new sapling. Hard to believe it all started right here, Mason said, his arm around Olivia's shoulders as they looked at the young tree. If that tree hadn't fallen, we might never have met, Emma observed, wise beyond her 9 years. Olivia smiled, her hand resting on her growing belly. I think we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be. Mason kissed his wife's temple, feeling a contentment he'd once thought impossible. From a falling tree to a rising family, he murmured, I'd say that's a pretty good story. The best story, Olivia agreed, leaning into his embrace as Emma danced around the sapling, her laughter floating on the breeze, a sound that completed the happiness they'd found together.